and welcome to week 7 of Heart to Heart. This week we will be talking about chapter 7 of Men, Women, and the Mystery of Love, and it is titled Resenting Chastity, the Current Crisis. So this week we're talking about chastity, yay! Alright, so I'd like to open up with a question. How does our society resent virtues today? Just think about that for a minute. How do many people in our society look down upon living a virtuous life or practicing virtues in your life, or how do they even resent virtuous people? So just think about that as we go through our discussion today. So I'd like to open up with an example of this. So resenting virtues in our society is common, and an example of this would be, say there's a student who studies diligently and she gives up going out to parties because she'd rather finish her assignments and study for tests and do well in school, and her peers think she's boring and nerdy and just doesn't have a lot of fun in her life, and they resent her because of it. But this student, by not going along with what everyone else is doing, she's standing as a reminder of her peers' laziness and immoral behavior, and therefore they're resenting her virtue. So that's just a very small example. People resent all sorts of virtues in all different ways all the time, but there's just an example to kind of give you an idea of what exactly I'm talking about when I say resenting virtues. So, a lot of the times people devalue virtues in order to excuse themselves from living a good, virtuous life themselves and not holding themselves to live by a higher standard. Since they don't want to make the effort to change, they treat the virtues lightheartedly, and they'll even put down those who are practicing a virtuous life, just to justify their own lack of moral character. It kind of goes back to that basic idea of, when people make fun of other people, it's just because they're jealous of what that person has. It kind of goes back to that idea, sort of. When people put down others or openly attack virtues, it's kind of just showing that they just wish that they could be that virtuous. They could have those virtues. They could be practicing those virtues. So, but it is a reflection of their own lack of moral character. They obviously people who will put down virtues kind of understand that maybe they aren't exactly living out the virtues in their own lives, and therefore they think it's, quote, unimportant. So, the virtue that is probably most resented today is chastity, and we'll talk about why as we go through, but, so the definition of chastity actually has a lot of facets to it, so I'm going to go through them right now, but yeah, a lot of people have a basic understanding of what chastity is. I actually walked around ASU's campus and asked several different students what they thought chastity was, and there were a lot of different responses, and most people have an idea of what it is. They know a part of the definition, but they don't know all of it. So I'm going to tell you what exactly chastity is. So it is the virtue that respects the dignity of our human sexuality and the sacredness of marital love. It is also the virtue that helps a person take responsibility for his or her actions. It gives a person freedom from slavery to passions, from loss of virginity to someone not their spouse, and from mortal sin and eternal punishment. It is a gift from God, it is a grace, and it is a spiritual effort. So, it has a lot of parts to it, obviously, and I think that's why we find it so difficult to live out in our lives sometimes, because how are we supposed to live out this virtue that encompasses so many things and so many parts of our life revolve around it or are affected by it? So, it's really difficult, which is probably why it's the virtue that our society doesn't like the most. But it is very important to live it out, and we're going to talk about how exactly it can be done. So, many people don't see chastity as a good thing, obviously, but they actually see it as an evil, which is really interesting, because sometimes when people resent chastity, they know it's like this virtuous thing, but it's kind of should be, or they think it is unimportant. But calling it an evil is a very different thing. The reason that it can be called this is some people think, or there is a common argument against chastity that says it is damaging to psychological health because sexual desire is natural and it shouldn't be restricted in any way. So that's why people sometimes see it as an evil. Which is really sad because that's not at all what it is, and it's not meant to restrict you. It's actually meant to free you of these sinful desires and sinful actions and make you happy in your marriage eventually one day, when you are married. Or if you're already married and you're not practicing chastity, chastity gives you that, like if you do begin to practice chastity or begin to understand what it is and you weren't before, makes for a much better relationship between you and your spouse and much better respect for each other, and it helps in all sorts of ways. So, but unfortunately, chastity is looked down upon in our media, obviously, in sex education programs, because, they're not really teaching chastity in those. And in college, obviously, that's a great example too. It's looked down upon in several ways, but these are kind of some big areas that it definitely is. So for example, in movies, if there's a chaste character or a virgin character in the film, this person usually is portrayed as awkward, naive, or repressed. Just think about, I'm sure you can come up with at least one film in your head that you've seen before that has that character. And why does the media have to portray chaste people in that light? Probably because they don't know the true meaning of it, and just, I guess, the way our society acts and thinks nowadays, maybe that movie wouldn't be super popular if, the chaste character was actually perceived in a real, true light, closer to what a real life chaste person is. So that's probably why, and it gets laughs out of people, and it makes the character likable or weird or cool or in one way or another. But just why are these characters portrayed this way, though? Think about that, and even they go so far as to show in movies, if there's a coming of age story for a film, it revolves around the virgin character losing his or her virginity, and they call that coming of age. How is having sexual intercourse before marriage make you more of an adult or more mature? And how have you come of age when you've done that? So think about that. Is that really, is having sex really show that you're an adult? Like, when you were a virgin, you weren't mature, but now that you've had sex, you've experienced life, and you're an adult, and you have come of age. That is a really twisted way of portraying someone coming of age, or learning about him or herself, or becoming an adult, or becoming mature, or having all the great experiences in life that everyone should. Like, that is so untrue, and this is just what our media constantly feeds us. Constantly. So think about that as we go through this, but next time you're watching even a romance movie, or even a rom-com, or any movie with a romantic subplot, just pay attention to that, and just pay attention to and see if when that character has sex, if they're portrayed in a new light after that or something. just pay attention to that, because our media creators tend to do that a lot in several movies, or even, TV shows and etc., So in relationships today, we shouldn't be asking questions that have to do with the subjective aspect, which is what we talked about last week or a couple weeks ago. Such as, do I have strong feelings and desires for this person? Or does this person have strong feelings and sensual desires for me? Those aren't the questions that we should be asking. When we practice chastity, the questions we are asking ourselves have to do with the objective side of love. Such as, how can I respect this person? And what things can I do to show self-giving love and not self-getting love? So, the thing is, people are like, well, chastity is really hard to live out. And it is. Trust me, it's very hard to live out. Even those people who have been trying to practice it for years and years and years, you're always, always, always struggling with it. But it's a beautiful thing when you come to understand how to live it out in your life and how to help yourself learn about it and practice it and understand it. And it really helps you in all areas of your life. Respect other people as people, and respect yourself as a person worthy of respect from others in all sorts of ways, obviously. But yeah, chastity doesn't automatically come to us. We don't just look at, for girls, we don't just encounter guys and have an immediately purely selfless attitude of Christian kindness toward them. That just doesn't happen. And guys to girls, we don't just automatically encounter someone of the opposite sex and we're just like, oh, I have no, bad thoughts, or, we don't just, encounter someone and automatically, have this practicing chastity, or we don't automatically just practice chastity and, pull out this virtue out of our, spiritual toolbox and, have it with us, right away. It just doesn't happen. So this is why we need, this virtue of chastity to help us integrate our initial sensual and sentimental attractions with authentic love for the other as a person. So chastity is the virtue that enables us to love in this way. So we don't just automatically have it. It takes time and effort and a lot of prayer to learn how to practice it in our daily lives and live it out. We don't just automatically have it in our toolbox. We're not just like, okay, I am all of a sudden chaste and practicing chastity constantly, and no, it does not happen like that, and you can't expect it to. So practicing it or trying to practice it in your life in all different ways is wonderful, and praying about it definitely helps, and just really making an effort and not expecting it to just come to you, because if you don't make the effort, it's gonna be really hard for you to actually learn about it and learn how to live it out in your own personal life. Chastity is not something that hinders our love. Instead, it makes real love possible. Practicing chastity in your life is a gift to your future spouse, and it protects love from falling into utilitarianism. Only the chaste man and chaste woman are capable of true love. So that's pretty intense. Only the people who are chaste are capable of true love. And it makes sense. If we go back to the definition, obviously, it's a virtue that respects the dignity of our human sexuality and the sacredness of marital love. Okay, obviously, if we practice chastity, we will be capable of real love because of just that. And then it's also the virtue that helps a person take responsibility for his or her actions. If we're taking responsibility for our own actions when we encounter people of the opposite sex, or anyone for that matter, but we can truly love that person. It gives us freedom from slavery to passions, from loss of virginity to someone who's not our spouse, from mortal sin and eternal punishment. Obviously, those things are all sinful and not acts of true love. So practicing chastity frees us from all those things. Therefore, it helps us have this true love. It's a gift from God. Obviously, God gives us all good things. He never gives us bad things. It's a grace, and grace is always good. And it's a spiritual effort. So if you put forth the effort in this way, you will be able to have this true love. So seriously, if you are practicing chastity, you are capable of true love. So it's not like it's intense to word it in that way, but it's honestly a really good thing. And that is a very true statement. I mean, if you're not practicing chastity, you're not capable of true love. How can you practice chastity in your daily life? Think about that. Some examples are dressing modestly. It mostly pertains to women, but men too. But dress modestly. If you are covering up everything that should be covered and should not be seen by the world, you are respecting yourself and helping others respect you and not fall into sin. And modesty obviously is a part of chastity because you are taking responsibility for your own actions, and like the way you dress says a lot about you. So covering up shows that you respect yourself and you respect others enough to not let them fall into sin, and you respect yourself enough to not let other people see you, and you are waiting for that one person that you will be married to in your life to be the only one to see you in that way. Not spilling your emotions to everyone you meet, but guarding your heart. This ties more into emotional chastity, which is a topic for a whole other discussion. But guarding your heart is a big part of chastity. You don't want to get, quote, close to everyone you meet or to a lot of people that you meet. And protecting your heart and keeping your emotions to yourself and only letting those who you know very well and who are there for you as true virtuous friends, only letting them know the deepness of your life, and not giving that part of you to several people who you may or may not see again. And just really honestly praying that you can practice chastity in your own life is a big thing. And even just praying for help for yourself to practice the parts of chastity. Praying for strength to have the effort, or to have the motivation to practice this virtue. Praying for the grace of chastity, thanking God for this gift that He's given you, praying that you will be able to have true loving thoughts towards others and to respect others as human beings. Just praying for it is helping you practice it. So these are just a few ways, and there are several others, but that's a start. In Bible study this week, we read 1 Peter 1, verses 13 through 15. And basically this talks about the fact that we are called to be holy. And God has called us to this holiness. And the way I tied it in was practicing chastity helps us to be holy because it keeps us from sexual sin. So I would encourage you to read that, because it has a little bit to do with what we're talking about this week. And yeah, so that is my discussion on chastity. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I will see you next week. Bye.